Ready to rock and roll. Right, welcome to Crypto Mondays featured guests on Zoom, 18th of March 2026. Uh, these weekly sessions are Global Thought Leadership by Crypto Mondays. Oops, sorry. Forthcoming attractions. Next week we have Tomer Bariach, who is going to discuss the long tail of real-world assets.
Yeah,
So
so
that's the 25th.
Tomer's great. Super smart guy. And I actually met him when he was working at Bancor, which was the original AMM.
Thanks, Lou. And so there's a little bit on him. Bancor invented the automated market maker, the AMM. Textile, which is his new venture, is he says is Etsy for private credit tokenization. So we look forward to it. It's going to be quite a good one, actually. Then just a reminder that we're open to suggestions for featured guests. So we focus on personal journey, passions, insights, trends. We try not to shill, no shilling. It's educational in nature, and yeah, it's really to share with the audience and for the audience to engage with the speakers. So it's more thought leadership, leading industry players who are discussing the topics, the trends, and the technologies. So please feel free to engage with Nick today. And then just some members announcements. If anybody has an announcement of a product launch or capital raised or they got a new job, they do a elevator pitch for us before we kick off. You're welcome to put up your hand and share with us. And then in terms of invitations, thanks Lou for posting that. Just to know that you can join the Crypto Mondays Collective. You just go to the cryptomondays.io homepage and join us. You can waitlist for Agent Monday, which we're building. Alan's been very busy doing that and launching the pilot shortly. And then the featured guest calendar. Thank you, Lou, for posting that for us. And so today's featured guest is Nick Niedermowwe of Circuit DAO. And I'll hand over to him just after Lou says a few words. And then we're excited to hear what you have to say, Nick. Thanks very much.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, Robin. And looking forward to hearing your talk, Nick. Lots going on, obviously, at Crypto Mondays, in addition to the main calendar page, which I put in the chat and everybody should register for. The Decentralized AI Agent Alliance is going strong. And if anybody wants to join that, just send us an email. Our next general meeting there is on April 6th, and the featured guest is the head of AI for Near. So it should be a super interesting meeting.
Thanks, Lou. So you all sorted? That's
Yes.
your update? Cool. So over to you, Nick. Rock and roll, dude. Excited to hear.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for having me. So, like I said, I didn't prepare any slides today. What I wanted to do is just talk about Circuit in general. If there's questions, we need to dive into things a bit deeper. I'll pull up, I'll screen share, and we can take a look at our sort of documentation. But before we look at Circuit, I figured I would give a brief intro to Chia, the blockchain that we're actually building on, because I don't think it's that widely known. And it's actually quite a unique blockchain in terms of what they've done with their consensus, and so some pretty clever stuff going on. And I think the general sort of principle is, it's very close to sort of cypherpunk ideals. So it's a kind of blockchain that people that like to run their own node and use something that's permissionless and decentralized and censorship resistant. So yeah. Great stuff. It's the kind of thing I like, and my co-founder as well. So that's kind of why we chose Chia as our blockchain to build Circuit on. I guess the key thing to mention about Chia is that it's a proof of space blockchain, and what that means is it's basically an alternative to Bitcoin's proof of work. Instead of compute, you use your hard drive space. That can either be like a spinning disk or your SSD storage. And the nice thing about that is that pretty much anyone has got some spare hard drive capacity, right? And it's very commoditized. So if you buy yourself a hard drive in one of these external, an external hard drive, it's going to be a Western Digital or Seagate, I don't know, 18 or 20 terabyte drive, which is pretty much exactly the kind of stuff large hyperscalers stick into their data centers, right? So you're very much on a level playing field in terms of cost structure, and plus the fact that if you've got some spare capacity lying around, it's already sunk cost for you, and you can just use it, right? You don't need to compete with an ASIC as is the case with proof of work, right? And I think that's the key idea or innovation behind it, that you have something which is not sort of proof of stake. So you do actually need to utilize a real world utility or something that physically runs somewhere. And without sort of these negative side effects that you need to do that at industrial scale, be careful about your cost structure, have access to cheap electricity, right? Your hard drive is consuming barely any electricity, and SSDs effectively none. So you can do it from anywhere. And that has basically led to Chia being extremely decentralized. So the blockchain has 30,000 full nodes running. It's second only to Bitcoin. It literally runs on a tiny Raspberry Pi. You can run on a laptop, on a PC, on anything basically. And I think some people run even nodes on their mobile phones. And you can, wherever you run your node, you can simply use whatever capacity, storage capacity you have, and also start mining. They call it farming. So miners are farmers on Chia. Yeah, I think that's the sort of big appeal in a nutshell, right? Anyone can do it. You can just chip in and become part of the network. So even for sort of farming pools, if you want to smooth out your rewards, you can join a pool. Even there, you would do it in a way that you don't need to trust the pool. So even that is built completely trustlessly. You join the pool with your own key, so the payout comes directly back to you. And you can also switch pools around very easily. So that's built into this pooling protocol. But it's kept very flexible and maximally decentralized. What else is there to mention, I guess, in this context? Any questions so far?
You want to? Well, first, you did mention who the founder was, and I think the founder of Chia is an interesting guy.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, good point, Lou. So the founder is Bram Cohen, who's actually the very person who came up with the BitTorrent protocol back in the day. So anyone, most people will have come across it. So one of the top guys in terms of building decentralized infrastructure. He kind of invented it in a sense. And yeah, he's taken to this, and so I think his whole philosophy from the start was geared towards decentralization and trying to improve on Bitcoin. So the project started around 2017, from what I remember. They spent 4 or 5 years building it, and mainnet launch was in 2021. So the blockchain has been around for nearly 5 years now.
What's
it's really
like on the chain.
Yeah, it's relatively, look, it's not surprisingly not that great, right? I mean, they're not super visible, unfortunately, and nobody really knows why. I think they've chosen not to be super present on sort of in the crypto, on conferences. You barely see them speak, and they have a few appearances here and there, but they're not widely known, and I don't know why they're that kind of behind the scenes and what their motivations are, but it is what it is.
And how did you end up building on it?
Yeah, look, I bumped into the team actually it was at a conference, so that they do show up sometimes. Back
At what conference? I've never, I feel like I go to all the conferences or a lot of the major ones, and I don't
Right.
I've ever seen them.
Yeah, and it was actually a tiny conference, very
Yeah.
exclusive, in LA. Medici, they were called. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Oh yeah. Oh my
Um,
God. Well, Medici is the conference. It's the best conference in all
right.
of crypto.
Do they still exist? Are they are they still around?
I only had the pleasure of going to and so Medici is run by this guy Adam. Remember Adam's last name?
Yes. Yes.
I'm spacing his.
W something.
Yeah, his father used to be, I think, the second richest American for a short while. His father was the founder of
Oh wow.
Global Crossing.
Right.
Yeah, and which was worth 100 over 100 billion at the peak of the craze. In
Right.
any case, and Adam has a really amazing talent. I've only had the pleasure of going to one, and he does it during uh, uh, the uh, the guy from Drexel's conferences. Who started them? The guy from Drexel does these amazing
Yeah.
conferences in LA and Singapore. So I went to one in Singapore that he put on. And anyways, it was the single best room of people I've ever been in my 8.5 years in crypto.
Yeah. No, I mean same for me. So the one in LA, that was 2018. Mike Novogratz was there. Hester Pierce. I think Naval Ravikant showed up. So it was amazing. Um, yeah, and I mean they pitched what they were doing and telling people
Yeah,
about it
Michael
as well.
Milken, it's Michael Milken conference. Yeah, that it happens during.
Right. Yes, exactly. It was across the road, right?
Yeah,
In the yeah. So yeah, fantastic conference, and it made so much sense what they were trying to do, right?
and
In sort
Adam
of
Winnick.
trying Winnick, that's it. Yes, correct. Yeah, so it was. I only went to that one, but yeah, I think it still is the best crypto conference I ever went to be honest.
And how did you get in? I mean, it costs a lot of money to go, or I mean, you have to be a client of Medici's, or
Well, so we no, we got invited, and we were building a crypto fund back in the day. So we were one of the first teams to actually build a crypto ETF. And we had, I think, just received our regulatory approvals, and we somehow ended up on Adam's radar, and he invited us over to talk about it. So we gave a brief presentation there, um, and yeah, that's how it happened.
yeah. And what
Um,
year was that?
2018.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and look, I think for me at least, Chia was kind of the highlight in terms of what was going on and what was being built in the crypto space. And I remember there were sort of other teams. I think Hedera were there and just presenting what they were planning to do. And I was never into this high TPS stuff, and it never seemed really consistent with what crypto can deliver and should deliver. Um, and so for me, it's always been a bit of a curiosity, right? That things like Solana have taken off the way they have. It's kind of the exact opposite of what Chia is, right? It's sort of a high throughput. You need to run massive nodes, have huge budgets to participate in the network. Bandwidth requirements are insane. So it's the kind of thing you simply can't run from home, right? So it makes Bitcoin worse, not better, right? It's kind of the opposite direction of where they should have gone. And I think Chia did, they had the right philosophy and sort of it sort of aligned with how I think about crypto. And yeah, so we were, my co-founder now I only met a few years later, and we started this project in 2023. So that came after the whole the crypto ETF. That was a separate thing. But yeah,
Hey,
I mean, they
sorry,
took a
Nick, I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. Hey, there are people waiting. Uh, I don't know, Robin, if you're the host, or Alan, make people other co-hosts and let the people in who are trying to join.
I don't see anybody. Hello.
Okay. Okay, sorry, go on.
yeah. Yeah. And so for us, it was great to see that the whole project came to fruition, and we kind of from the basic the day they launched, it was clear I wanted to build something on it. And then we spent a bit of time figuring out what to build, and yeah, ultimately we ended up building Circuit, so a CDP protocol, Collateralized Debt Position protocol. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's basically a type of lending protocol where the stablecoin that you borrow is natively issued by the protocol itself. So on Ethereum, the big one is MakerDAO, or Sky, they're called now. Yeah, for us, that seemed to be like the obvious choice. I think it's one of the key DeFi primitives any blockchain should have, and especially something like Chia, right? So if you're massively decentralized, what that means is that your native token, the Chia token, is actually a very good store of value, right? Because a store of value property is derived directly from the decentralization, right? That is kind of the key thing which carries it. And once you've got a good store of value, then obviously it's a great asset to use as collateral, right? So what Circuit allows you to do is to lock up, Chia tokens in a smart contract, and then borrow this natively issued stablecoin against that. And yeah, so maybe at this point it makes sense to talk a bit more about Circuit itself. We have actually taken a lot of inspiration from MakerDAO. We looked at all the various CDP protocols out there. MakerDAO obviously evolved a lot over the years itself. And what we wanted to do is really stick with this kind of cypherpunk ethos and really keep the thing as decentralized and immutable as possible. So we did ultimately make a few changes to how Maker approaching it. Maker smart contracts are these days, I think, fully mutable almost, right? So you've kind of got very, very few guarantees in terms of what governance can do. They can pretty much change around things any way they like, and we didn't think that was ideal. So what we did is we actually tightened down things substantially, and all that was left in the end was about 40 different parameters, numerical values that governance can change. So things like interest rates, because you do have to respond to market conditions to some extent. And then there's a few other things governance can basically tweak, as the protocol grows.
I'm sorry. So whose governance did you copy?
So the governance we basically developed from scratch. So that's our own thing. Governance happens completely on chain. Obviously people are encouraged to discuss online in a governance forum first, but once it happens, kind of the whole process of proposing something and then voting on it and implementing it, that happens fully on chain, and that's basically a custom built governance system. And in fact, because of the nature of Chia, right? Chia is a UTXO-model blockchain. So it's stateless, and that means what you're interacting.
I'm sorry. It's what kind of a blockchain?
A stateless chain.
Stateless. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, as opposed to stateful. So it's not an account model blockchain, right? Like Ethereum or most other chains, right? So everything in Chia is basically just a coin, and each coin has got a hash in it. That's basically it, right? It's got a parent coin, a hash, and an amount, and that's very similar to how Bitcoin works, right? So every time you spend a Chia coin, what you do is you reveal the pre-image of that hash, and that pre-image is your smart contract, right? So it's basically whenever you spend the coin, you reveal the whole thing. You show the network what the smart contract looks like, and then you provide sort of a solution, basically function arguments that you feed into the smart contract. The farmers, the block builders, look at that. They run the program, they run the smart contract, they verify it. And in the end, what comes out is a number of conditions, they're called. And these are basically sort of operators on the blockchain. And they can basically change the state. They can create new coins. They can sort of verify certain conditions. For example, how much time has passed since a coin was previously spent, and things like that. So it's a very sort of the whole thing is Turing complete. So you can build anything in it. but it's very sort of locked down and minimalistic. Again, to enable this whole thing to run on a Raspberry Pi, you cannot afford like Ethereum to have a huge sort of state vector that you're carrying around with you all the time.
Sure. So I mean, I talked to Bram. Trying to think, I can't even remember the context, about Chia a few years back, and I mean, it was obvious at the time that the tech was world class. I mean, Bram is iconic. But
Indeed.
So you built this product, but obviously, in order for people to take loans against Chia, you need to have people who own Chia.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, and look, I think like I said, right? The kind of key thing we sort of need to achieve is basically raise awareness, right? They haven't been very visible. I think not that many people know about Chia, and it's a great shame, right? Because it's such an awesome blockchain, and people love it, right? Once you get started with it, it's super easy to get
now
into.
I do remember now why I was introduced to him. I raised in November 21. We raised. I was part of a team of 3 at Blockchain Co-Investors. We raised 300 million for a crypto SPAC, and somehow we were introduced through Bram's bankers. I guess he was looking to do a really substantial raise for Chia, and so we talked about that they were a merger candidate. So he was a super impressive guy, but at the time, again, he didn't have any usage then either, and so it didn't really make any sense for us.
Right.
But he was a super impressive guy.
Yeah, I mean, they've built fantastic tech, and the question is, why hasn't it become sort of, why aren't people all over it, right? And I think people generally are. Once you get into it, it's great, and once you realize and once you understand how it works, but they've been sort of a bit, and been flying under the radar, and hopefully that's going to change. And I think, I think the more things get built on top of it, the better it will get, the more things people can do with it. And maybe there was simply not enough pressure for people that were holding Bitcoin and using Bitcoin to use something else, right? If you were into this kind of
Bitcoin's worked pretty well as a coin.
Exactly, right? And all the on and off ramps are there, the whole ecosystem is there, right? And Chia has to build all that. And so I think there's a lot of sort of distraction from chains like Solana, right? And VCs have been relentlessly pushing their high TPS chains, and I think for VCs there maybe isn't enough money into the store of value story, right? Because if you can flog all sorts of other crazy things that are also extremely low cost if you're on a high TPS chain, right? So I think the incentives maybe were a bit off there, and it's a great shame, right? So it feels like in my mind, crypto sort of lost a few years by being too focused on this high TPS thing. So I'm always sort of gloating a little bit when I see one of them sort of bite the dust, right? Like Cadena recently. And I think there'll be more and more of those, right? And I think the whole high TPS hype is gonna just fizzle out eventually. What will be left is the kind of stuff that crypto really is good at, right? Decentralization, store of value, and
I'm sorry, I'm not fine. Why is low TPS a good thing?
Because you get decentralization, right? That's the kind of trade-off, right? So none of these
certainly agree with you that decentralization is a good thing. We'll start there.
And I'm always amazed at the market caps of things like Solana or Ripple and whatever, right? It's like tens or hundreds of billions, but really, what is that? Why, right? I think it's a huge mispricing in the market.
And I think one of the biggest problems is so what? So they go do what they do. Who cares?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't impact people. I mean, this obviously my view, but there's a lot of everybody was upset or at least in my Twitter feed, about the Vanity Fair article. It came out. I don't know if you saw it.
Hmm.
A bunch of people in the Ethereum community, like Mike Novogratz and Kathy Wood, and they took this picture, the Vanity Fair classic picture. Yeah, and I generally agree. It does not reflect well on the industry. But I mean,
Hmm.
in my view, our industry, and so many people saying, this is why we're, sucking wind. And that's not why we're sucking wind. In my view, we're sucking wind because we haven't built something that people want yet.
Right. Yes, and I agree, right? And I think what Chia have been trying, to their credit, from the very start, right? They were very careful not to fall foul of sort of financial markets regulations, right? So they didn't show their token and didn't do an ICO, and they avoided all these things that a lot of other teams were prepared to do, and they just wanted to play it by the book. And I think they've always
I think
had this vision
it
of.
was a fair launch.
In a way, I mean, they did keep a pretty substantial pre-farm, which was simply meant for them as a company to be able to pay their people and develop the thing, right? And
Yeah.
keep developing the blockchain, which is fair enough. Yeah, so I don't think people had an issue with that. And they have developed a lot of things, but it's been quite slow. I think from the start, they aimed at this kind of tokenization narrative, and let's get tokenized stocks and funds on chain. And I think that's been just a story that's been playing out in slow motion, right? Um, and
Yeah, it turns out that
last,
the people who are best at doing that is Goldman Sachs, Robinhood.
right, yeah, and they've already got the distribution, right, at a
Exactly.
much larger
Yes.
scale than any
Yes.
crypto company, right?
Exactly.
Right. So
Yes.
and then it becomes sort of a very hard sell, right? So you're trying to, is
Is
blockchain, is
anything
that
going
type
on
of
there?
blockchain
Is there
yeah,
like what's got what is on Chia? What's got that you're aware of? What's got the most traction?
yeah. So what they've got is this project Permuto, which is basically a project to launch tokenized stocks on Chia. And that's been, in the works for a couple of years now.
Okay, but that's got no users because that's not a thing.
Yes, and exactly. And even if it becomes a thing, so they've done all the SEC filings and so on. It's still not quite done, but it will probably, hopefully at some point this year, it will finally get approved. But then you're right, there isn't enough capital, right? There's so many other chains and blockchains and
And by the
like
way, you
how
don't need a blockchain to own stock, and
correct.
it's worked well for hundreds of years.
Correct. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, sure, things like 24/7 trading, right, that you can only do on a blockchain right now. But even there, traditional exchanges are catching up, right? I think Nasdaq
Yeah.
are offering windows on
So
weekends now.
but again, the question I asked was, and I appreciate that. Sounds like that's where a lot of the focus on the chain is going. But has there been anything that is actually running on the chain that has any users?
It's quite limited, to be honest. Yeah. So there is an AMM, there is a Uniswap style AMM. There is us now. They've got this thing called offer files, right, where people can trade. But the fact is, yeah, I mean, it's sort of.
But those are like elements of, that's like the plumbing. It's like you're building a city. And so, they put in the plumbing, but I'm asking, is there anybody living there?
Yeah.
And it's limited. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a small community, right? It's fairly tight knit. It's a nice and great community, but yeah, it's just not big enough, right? And I think that probably should be their entire focus, right? Just spread the word and get the name out there, right?
It should be somebody's focus.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see how it goes, right? But the good thing is, because it's so decentralized, one thing that won't happen is that Chia will just disappear, right? So something like Cadena, if the foundation there runs out of money and they shut that down, it will just go away. That just can't happen to Chia, right? It'll just keep running, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, I'm actually despite everything, I'm very sort of positive in the long run about the project. And yeah, like I really do believe.
And you're positive because
because the store of value narrative is never going to go away. And I think, you know, if the whole thing gets repositioned somehow, I'm not sure by what mechanism or how it will happen, but you know, it's much better than I like it a lot better than Bitcoin, to be honest, right? It's much more usable. You've got much better you know, in terms of vault infrastructure, right? Bitcoin still doesn't have like custody that actually lives up to their $1.5 or $2 trillion market cap, right? It's still a bit. I think the sort of vault and multi-sig support on Bitcoin is still fairly rudimentary, actually, right? So Chia is actually ahead in that regard, and they launched a sort of
But
cloud
I mean,
wallet.
yeah, and I certainly appreciate that, you know, that Chia could be better. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but even assuming that it is, so what? I mean, at this point, I think Bitcoin is one, right? At some point, right? I am not looking personally for a better store of value because, yeah, now obviously, if one came out and it took the world by storm, and all of a sudden there's something fundamentally better about it, that is super important to me. But I think outside of that, it seems to me that in terms of the digital store of value, that Bitcoin's won. Like this game is over, and not only has it won, but its lead over everybody else gets bigger every single day. It seems now that obviously I've been wrong many times before, but I'm largely just spending my life looking around just to see if in fact there is anything going on. But Chia does have some unique properties, and I think can be evolved into, you know, potentially, you know, some, you know, enable some very valuable things.
Yeah, and just think about this, you know, using Bitcoin as collateral, right? It is actually a bit of a hassle, and because you can't do anything in terms of DeFi natively on Bitcoin, right? And Chia
I
can
got to say
provide all that.
that's getting solved. It really is. I mean, these things aren't easy, but yeah, we just participate in a company called they spoke called Tachi, that's kind of bringing AI to Bitcoin, helping, you know, to potentially solve that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Look, I mean, that's how it might play out, right? Maybe Bitcoin is the big winner, and there won't be anything else, or there's no need for anything else. Yeah, I mean, certainly for us to develop the thing, doing the same thing on Bitcoin would have been incredibly much harder because of Bitcoin script. So having something that's Turing complete, a proper smart contract language, has actually been great. And yeah, but you're right. You know, in the end, you can somehow get all these things done on Bitcoin as well, even if it's much more of a pain. And probably people will do it
Look,
eventually.
I mean, I think obviously if you're running smart contracts, then you generally, I think, go to Ethereum, and that works pretty well. Is Ethereum going to be the winner in smart contracts? I think that market is much easier. I think they have a sizable lead, and it feels to me like that lead is getting meaningfully bigger every single day. But you know, it's still so early in that market. I'm sure there was a time when I would have said the same thing about, you know, Yahoo winning search.
Right.
But you know,
Yeah, and
Google's been in the lead for, you know, 20 plus years, and I feel, you know, the Bitcoin's the Google of, you know, at this point of store of value. But so for yourself, then, so you're building the product, and then
yeah, so it's actually built. It's done. We launched 2 months ago, so it's live on mainnet. And you know, you can go and use it. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, ultimately, for this to get bigger, I mean, the chain overall needs to get bigger, right? Yeah, we will just have to see how it plays out, to be honest. It unfortunately is what it is. The market cap of Chia is tiny. I think it's below $100 million. And again, that seems to me like a huge mispricing. If something like Ripple is currently at, I don't know, 150 billion,
but
right?
again, you shouldn't
So
do that. You in all sincerity, you should not do that. that's like saying it's, it's 36 degrees outside and that's cold, and, unless you like
Right.
Coldplay. I mean, okay, I mean, cold and Coldplay, I mean, that there might be some relation, but not really. That's a bad analogy, but yeah, you don't have to hate on Ripple to like something, right? And then there are
No,
people who
no,
like Ripple, and Ripple's got. I mean, I'm not into Ripple, but I have
mm,
experienced the Ripple army, and that is a thing.
mm,
And so I
sure.
think everybody who goes out and rips on Ripple, they're not making any friends by doing it, but you
Mm.
can make some enemies.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, they're doing an amazing job at marketing, right? So I live in London, right? And if you go to the to Canary Wharf there, the financial district, a bit out of town, right?
Yeah,
The tube station there, once a year they just plaster, literally they buy every single billboard and whatever. There's a huge screen in that tube station, right, where all the finance people come down after work, right? They literally, the entire station is plastered full of Ripple adverts, right? So Ripple is a bit like, it's a kind of, they sell themselves as a compliant crypto for people that work in finance and are too scared to touch Bitcoin or something that's actually crypto. And make of it what you want, but sort of they've got their marketing together, right? You've
yeah.
got to give them
Hey,
that.
yeah. Look, I'm not a fan of Tron either, but these things have massive market values for a reason.
Right. Yes. So look, I mean, I think you
So
can argue,
I was just going to
Bitcoin
say,
never.
yeah, I was just one of the things maybe you can do to help at the margin with Chia. I think it'd be fun to have if Bram would come and yap.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know how much Bram. I mean, he is kind of a very techie guy, right? And yeah, and look, um,
He's a
if
very smart, well-spoken guy. That's my recollection of my conversation with him. We weren't talking
right.
about a whole lot of tech because it wasn't tech people, deep tech people on the call.
Hmm,
Um,
hmm,
but I mean, before we talked to him, we did do some research with some deep tech people who were very impressed.
right. Yes, I mean, I agree, right? He should be out there, and look, I don't have an insight into that, right? But he could easily be out there at crypto conference, right? People would love to hear from him. He's got such a unique story. He's built such a great product, right?
Yeah,
So why not make sure it's
exactly.
right?
Yes.
So yeah,
So
you should give him a nudge.
yeah, I will
Pretty,
follow up with him.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got to get. I'm going to be getting on a train in a moment, so I'm going to go on mute.
If anybody has any questions, just put up your hand or open your mic. I've got one or two. So you went live 2 months ago, and are you seeing some traction? And I'm interested in what's your target market? How's that happening? What are your plans? What's your strategy for the future? Yeah, pretty much
Yeah.
that's my first one.
Yeah, so we've been live for 2 months. I think our TVL is currently $200,000. So it's again quite small compared to any other chains. What we haven't done, I mean, those $200,000 are completely organic, right? So there's no assets in there from kind of the foundation or something that exists in other ecosystems, right? That sort of artificially inflate their TVLs and put 100 million on day one. We don't have that, so the whole thing has to sort of grow organically. Yeah, and it's been ramping up nicely. But yeah, I think ultimately, I think within the community, people know us, and I think the biggest challenge is going to be, how do we sort of get new people to come in and use Chia. So I think we'll be focusing on that.
And like this, the proof of space, versus the other proofs. Why do you think that's such a winner, and who do you think is going to use that, and do you think it's got legs into the future?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm personally always a bit concerned about is like this miner pool concentration in Bitcoin, right? Because it's such an industrial scale thing now, right? You can't just be a Bitcoin miner as an individual anymore, right? That ended long ago, right? So Bitcoin is actually quite concentrated in terms of who's mining, and I think if the two big mining pools merged, they could pull off a 51% attack, right? I think the economies of scale in Bitcoin or in proof of work are such that there is a massive sort of centralization behind it, right? And you don't have that in Chia. And I think it's fantastic. And for that reason, in my mind, Chia is a better store of value than Bitcoin, to be honest. So yeah, I would hope more people sort of recognize that. Ultimately, it's also not a good store of values. Nobody else is using it. But I think in terms of the tech, the potential is there, right? So there is an argument to be made. And plus, we are ahead of Bitcoin in terms of what's there in DeFi-wise. So it's a fully usable ecosystem. If you join in now, you have AMMs, you have something like Circuit. They've got this other neat thing they've baked into their token standard, which is offers. So you can basically trade with limit orders directly on chain. So basically you exchange information off chain, and then you settle your limit orders on chain. So there's stuff there, right? And it's really about yeah. How do we get more people to become aware of this?
Marketing. Alan, thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, hi, Nick. A little bit about Chia. I mean, what does it really take for someone to be like a home user, to be able to run and farm? Because I've been running it for a while, and I guess my experience is not lucrative, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the token price has had a pretty rough ride down. So it's not been lucrative, unfortunately, especially for people that have invested into hard drives to really become farmers on a larger scale, right? So I think. And to be fair, the Chia team have been saying it from the beginning, right? Ideally, just use your existing hardware, it's sunk cost, and then you can become a farmer at literally no investment, almost no investment, right?
Yeah, I didn't take that route. I mean,
right, yeah, and
I bought some equipment when the price was up at $1,300 at the very beginning 5 years ago, and
right.
it's been farming ever since. And I mean, I'm going to redeploy because it's just I haven't made the money to be able
How
to
much have you made, Alan?
cover it. I've acquired like 12 Chia over the last 5 years using 55 terabytes of disk space. So that's maybe worth $36 today. And maybe I was doing something wrong, but it's been farming for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, what happened? What happened when they launched mainnet was pretty insane, right? Because they'd been telling everyone, oh yeah, so they were basically before they launched, they didn't know what the price was going to be, right? So they were estimating it based on what they thought, how many farmers they're going to be, and they were saying, well, it should be around $20, and people were like, oh yeah, are we going to get to 10 petabytes 1 year after mainnet launch, or are we going to get to more than that, or so whatever? And then it completely blew up, right? It was absolutely insane. So instead of $20, it was trading at over $1,000 right after launch, right? And the net space, instead of being 10 petabytes a year later, they were within a week at 10 petabytes, and they were up to an exabyte within, I don't know, a couple of months or so, and they went up to 30 exabytes. So they were hugely successful at that time, and they basically hoovered up all 30 exabytes is a ginormous amount of storage capacity. And they basically hoovered up all spare data center storage capacity in the world. So people had heard about it, and it was mentioned by Seagate and Western Digital in their annual reports that they had a storage shortage because of Chia, right? That so many people plowed into it.
Yeah.
So it was successful, and back then actually people knew it, right? And they haven't managed for some reason to maintain that momentum, and it's just been a sort of just slowly, painfully been going downhill ever since, right?
Well, it's difficult for a small, if you only have a small amount of space, it's just a very low amount because there is still a good deal of space being farmed. I think it's still 6 exabytes or something, or more.
6 exabytes. Yes, still a huge amount. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, at this point, it's sort of not worth investing in farming. I don't think. Yeah, I think the token price is also, they estimated $20 at the beginning. We are now at $2.50, right? So we are like literally 90% down from what was quite a conservative sort of estimate 5 years ago, right? So,
Well, $2.95. Don't undersell yourself.
all right, well, there you go.
Okay,
Thanks,
thanks.
Alan. Lou, you got a question? We lost him.
I
I'm
think he
also
said he was getting on a
curious.
train.
Oh, yes. I'm curious about your journey. Well, I've got two questions. The one is about your journey. How was your journey as an entrepreneur in the Web3 space? What were the challenges you had, and how would you do it differently? And the second thing is, you said that you went through 3 security audits, which was quite onerous. What specific bugs were there? What were you ironing out? And can you use AI for that now, or are you sorted now? So those are my two questions.
Yeah, sure. So the first one, in terms of my journey, yeah, I've been in crypto for about 10 years now, and my first sort of venture in the space was this ETF. We basically tried to launch a Bitcoin or crypto index ETF back in 2017, 18. And I think we were quite early to all that. So in the end, it didn't work out. We were sort of struggling to navigate the regulatory landscape. It didn't fit neatly into. There were all sorts of issues around custodying crypto in a fund wrapper, basically. So we did eventually manage to launch a fund, but that had sort of limitations around who could invest. It was only sort of high net worth individuals, and it was, yeah, and crypto, especially back then, right? Bear markets were pretty terrible. So in the end, it didn't work out for us. When did we launch? I think we launched the fund in 2018, 19, and then yeah, so we kind of launched into this bear market, and it kind of fizzled out, unfortunately. And also the regulatory landscape wasn't quite there. So in hindsight, right, because you asked what have I learned from it? I've learned from it that sometimes you have to just wait it out with, it's generally not good advice, I think, in the startup space, right, to sort of kick your feet up and just wait for a bit. But crypto is, I think, a bit different, and these bear markets are weird, and regulation. It's a weird thing because it's this crossover between tech and finance, right? And if you do something that touches onto regulated topics, there's no point, you can't influence that, right? And I think something similar has happened to Chia, right, with their plan to tokenize stocks. They've had that plan for years and years, but there isn't much that they can do about it, right? And now, obviously, things have improved quite a lot, and on the sort of legislative front. But yeah, it's just going to take some time, right? And the SEC is going to not approve. They're not going to approve like tokenized securities overnight or lightly, right? They want to get it right, understandably. So I think that was probably the big takeaway for me, and that's why I'm still hopeful on Chia. It might seem pretty irrational, but I think the tech is great, and that it hasn't taken off. It is sometimes what it is, and I might be wrong with that bet or guess, but so I'm not too stressed about it, to be honest. I think Chia and Circuit will have its day.
Good.
Yeah, and I guess on to your second question about the audits. So 3 audits we did. And the reason we did that many is because we wanted to make sure, obviously, that it's secure. And Chia has its own smart contract language as well. It's a functional language, which is actually quite standard for UTXO-model blockchains. So it doesn't look anything like Solidity. And so it was a bit more challenging to develop it. And also, thinking in a sort of UTXO model for smart contracts, it does it's not that straightforward. It's really a bit counterintuitive, some of the stuff, how it works, and so it took us some time to figure it all out, and we just wanted to make sure that things are secure. And the auditors actually did a great job. They did find they did find some stuff, so we did another and then yet another sort of audit. The second one was a smaller audit. So the first one was a traditional one by Zelig, one of the big smart contract auditing firms. The second one was sort of an invite-only program by Immunify. So they picked basically some of their, a couple of their top security researchers. And then the third one was actually an audit competition, and I have to say that was fantastic. So I would recommend it to anyone. We did that on Cantina, and I think we had around 800 people participate.
Wow.
And about as many findings submitted. So a huge amount of, most of them obviously invalid, but we got a fantastic response, and they found great stuff as well. Lots of things, from informational things to actually a couple of high severity bugs as well. So it was worth,
How
we
does
spent
that work? How does the thing work?
Yeah, so security researchers can just sign up on this platform, and they continuously, list new projects that want to get their smart contracts audited, and you can just they can just take a look at the code and give it a go, right?
Wow.
Whereas a traditional audit, the auditing firm would allocate 2 or 3 smart contract researchers, and they would do the work, and obviously, no matter how good the 3 guys are that you get, if you get 800 people looking at it, it's just a completely different league, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and so we finished that end of last year, and then we still have an ongoing bug bounty, but yeah, nothing has been found in that for 2 months, so we feel pretty confident that it's that we found all the bugs, and it's secure now.
Amazing. Awesome. Any last questions? I think we're coming up to the hour now. So last chance, as Lou would say, going once, going twice. Right, well, thanks, Nick. That was most interesting. Yeah, it got quite exciting near the end there. Like it warmed up a bit that we start getting to some understandings and
Sure.
debates around the different protocols and things, because you have taken an unusual route. And yeah, I hope it works out that we get some traction and Chia gets some traction, because it's
Yeah,
always
fingers
see
crossed.
something that's good succeed,
Yeah, let's see how it goes. Yeah, and thanks for having me on. It was great having a chat.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks to
Thanks,
everybody that attended. And just a reminder that next week we have Toma, and it's going to be a good one. So we'll send the invites out tomorrow for that, and look forward to seeing you there. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you.